Hey, what's up YouTube? Welcome to today's video where we're going to go over the top 5 builds in Sanctum, and there has been quite a bit of a shift since the last time I did this, and that's pretty good because it means that people are getting to their endgame builds. However, there is one problem with this type of video, and that is Poe.ninja, and Poe.ninja has really shit the bed. We're at the point in the league where the meta won't have any more major shifts, so this type of video will be pretty interesting to see what exactly has happened. But the main problem with all this sort of stuff is that Poe.ninja has become screwed over because the API can only find 15,000 characters. Now, with the advent of 5 ways, every single person is level 100. If you sort by level 100, level 100. In fact, it is so hard to even bring your new character in that you have to be a streamer in order to see your character on Poe.ninja, and even then you might not find it. So we go here to Juggernaut and I try to go look at my person Kobe, it doesn't show up. But if you go be a streamer and have an advantage like the streamer queue, you type in Kobe, you can actually find your character. Now that's not exactly right, but that's just the sad state of affairs. I did make this character roughly a week ago, and that's why I'm unable to find it, because I'm assuming that even if you get a level 100 on your character at this point in the league, there's too many characters at level 100, so Poe.ninja does not add anyone new in. Now, my poor character is not on it and is level 100, so even though this list might be more or less correct, there's going to be a lot of builds that are left out, especially newer ones that people discovered, and that's just the sad state of affairs. I don't know if GGG can expand their API for which the Poe.ninja can pull from, but we'll have to see in the future. I do think that if PoE ever becomes one of the most popular games of all time, so say right now we have 5 million concurrent players or 20 million, I don't think this type of API system is going to work, and I do think that we have to find a different solution than what Poe.ninja currently has to offer. Now, without further ado, we have the number 1 skill, or not number 1, this is number 5, and this is pretty much Venom Gyre. Now, for everyone who doesn't know, I'm just going to showcase a little bit of random video. I pretty much typed in the skill 3.20 and mapping just so people can see exactly what I'm talking about, and this skill is Venom Gyre. I think this was around like number 3 or number 2 last time I did this, and a lot of people have swapped their Venom Gyre builds over to Tornado Shot, and that's purely because Tornado Shot is just a better scaling ability. It's also range is better in Sanctum, so Venom Gyre is more of a, at this point, turned into kind of a league starter ability. It does have that endgame scaling where you can take it to Ubers, you can do all the content with it. However, a lot of people just don't want to fully invest into it, and once you get into your league starter, you kind of want to try out a different build at times, and a lot of people still love Tornado Shot. Now, this build is completely dominated by Deadeyes, and I think I'm to blame for that. 89% of people are Deadeyes, 7% are playing Berserker variant, and that's more or less the strength stacking variant. So if you ever go on Poe.ninja and go look at Venom Gyre, so let's get out of that. So let's go Poe.ninja, Venom Gyre down here, and you'll see that if you sort by DPS, the highest DPS are actually probably Original Sin people. Yeah, Original Sin, there's the Berserker Strength Stacker variant, and it does do a lot of damage, and it's like infinite damage. Now, 40% of players are using Comb Spirits, and I do think that Comb Spirits are probably one of the most underrated uniques out there. I'll probably make a video about it. And even for like builds like Tornado Shot, getting Perma Berserk is the number 1 thing. A lot of people have their POBs, they actually have the Berserk gem in, and you'll see that you don't even get that much rage to generate it. So if you don't actually use Comb Spirits, like for instance, this person right here doesn't use it, but they have the Berserk gem in, and the Poe.ninja actually accounts for Berserk in the damage calculations, you'll see that it's pretty much a DPS fluff. So Comb Spirit is huge. It gives you more survivability, especially a Berserk buff effect. Now, I do think a lot of reasons why a lot of people swapped out of this build is because it's not the best for Sanctum. A lot of people have trouble with it, especially with the way I built it. I did use interrogation, and I do think that freeze and chill are probably one of the most important aspects of Sanctum. So that's why a lot of people probably did not have the best of time with Venom Gyre and Sanctum. If I was to do it again, I would probably not go interrogation and Secrets of Suffering. And you kind of have to name lock the monsters for a lot of people. They're not used to just using Venom Gyre from range. However, overall, this build is probably a S+ mapper, A+ bosser, and probably really good if you get good enough gear. A lot of people probably just didn't get to that level of upgrading before they move to something else. But hopefully with this the case, Venom Gyre won't get nerfed next league because it's only number 5 on the popularity list. Now, number 4 is a little bit weird. I didn't really know what to do with like Ice Spear, because this is technically Ice Spear. But the problem with this list, and I know is not fully correct, is that once you see Ice Spear and Cyclone, they're actually two different builds. So Cyclone is cast on crit, Ice Spear is cast on crit Forbidden Right, which are actually two different builds, unless you want to lump together cast on crit. And then you have Ice Spear. Ice Spear is predominantly 67-70% all ward loop. So you can tell they're ward loop because they're using Olaf's Resolve. So I decided to just put in, ward loop on there. But I think in reality, Venom Jar probably has more representation than either of those. Now, for people wondering, what does ward loop actually look like? It looks pretty cool. And the ward loop is kind of a build that kind of took over everyone's fantasy of playing an Auto Bomber. And Auto Bomber is pretty much a playstyle where you just run around the map and you do damage. And this is pretty much the case, right? This guy is walking around the map. Now, the biggest problem with this build is I don't think most people have a movement skill on this. So the mapping is not exactly the fastest. You don't exactly have the fastest move speed ever. And it is not a Mage Blood build or Headhunter build. They use the Trader, which is something that gives you flash charges back for every single flash you have missing. There's actually even a Sanctified Relic that grants you additional flash charges gain per second. So you get like 3 flash charges every 2 seconds or the other way around. And that is a gross looking filter. But anyhow, you can see the mapping is not like the fastest in the world, but it's a very fun playstyle in the sense that you don't do anything. You just walk around. And I think this is like a different variant of the build before people figured out you could actually use 4 flasks. So Warloop, basically a build that refuses to die. A lot of people spell the end of the build because of survival secrets being removed. Survival secrets was one of the unique jewels that make it so that you gain flash charges every 3 seconds. Now, the build concept fully revolves around dealing damage to yourself when a minion dies, and that damage you deal to yourself procs your cast when damage taken. The cast when damage taken is linked to Ice Spear, Freezing Pulse, Creeping Frost, and that's how you do it, and then it just keeps going on with the cycle over and over again. Now, the build has near infinite regen. As long as you are not getting one-shotted, your build is probably not going to die. You can stand in all sorts of degen, and it won't really matter. The build uses Omniscience and Annihilating Light for its damage. So Omniscience gives you all of the penetration you need. And Annihilating Light is just a triple damage staff. And it's pretty much unbeatable in terms of the damage you gain. Now, in order to gain all of the ward that you can see right here. Oh, it doesn't really show the ward. But you can see in the video right here. This person has around 1210 ward. So 1210 ward is all pretty much coming down from the helmet, the gloves, and the boots. And Olaf's Resolve is used to grant the ward needed so you do not die due to physical damage. So if you can see right here, the ward pretty much never really moves. And as long as this flask is active, you will never be breaking the ward because you don't take any damage. And you don't take a large enough damage hit to break the ward. Now, the main problem with this is because this build actually uses like Heartbound Loop or whatever this thing, or not Heartbound Loop, this to Dust, which makes it so you take a certain amount of damage. You can't actually have any armor. So if you look at these builds, 0 armor. And if you actually ever have a ward loop person in your group and you want to fuck them over, you just run Determination and they'll die fast, super fast, as they don't have enough, what's it called? You break their loop. Now this build, it has taken over a de facto auto bomber playstyle like I said before. And it's actually decent in Sanctum. You might not be able to see much, but the build does so much damage, and it does damage on the move, and it does freeze and chill. So it's actually really good in Sanctum, as long as you don't mind the visual clarity. Now, next up, we have Tornado Shot. And I did think that Tornado Shot was going to be the #1 build. But, however, it didn't really end up being the case. And let's go take a look at what Tornado Shot actually looks like. So I pretty much just selected these quick little videos just so you can see exactly what the mapping looks like. The Tornado Shot is primarily an all-around build, but not really super tanky unless you invest a lot into it and use a rare helmet. So you can see this build is pretty good at mapping. It has amazing single target. If I had to rank it, I think Tornado Shot is probably the highest single target ability or build in the game once you fully invest into it. But it's also really strong at mapping. It's not exactly the tankiest character, especially if you're running any Determination or Grace or any sort of layered defenses. However, its main selling point is that it is absolutely amazing at Sanctum. If you ever have Sanctum problems while playing a melee build, okay, as you can see, that's a very common Tornado Shot problem. You just end up randomly dying in maps. However, in Sanctum, you will freeze everything, you can off-screen everything, and Tornado Shot is probably the one build that has done the most no-hit Sanctum runs in the league. Now, 94% of the people are playing Deadeye since the Ascendancy provides just way too much benefit for projectile builds. I personally believe that Deadeye is kind of overpowered. It grants you improved Tailwind, 2 additional projectiles, Chain, Far Shot, and improved marks. Now, Tornado Shot is also home to the most popular magic finding setup, as everyone that's not using Omniscience, you can see that 65% of players are using Omniscience and everyone else is using Gold Worm, Divination, Distillate, Ventor's Gamble. Some people use the Ascetic. So you can tell right here that Tornado Shot is kind of home to 2 different builds, the traditional TS mapping variant and the other variant with Magic Find. Now, Black Sun Crest is still the helmet of choice, and this is the helmet that gives you a bunch of Omniscience. However, Heat Shiver, which is probably going to be nerfed in the upcoming patch, has crept its way up to 11%. Now, Tornado Shot also has 2 different ways of playing it, and that is between Trinity and Physical Cold Convert variant. Now, the Physical Cold Convert variant is you get a physical bow, you convert all of your Fizz damage to cold, you rely on Hatred scaling to scale your cold damage, or you get Fizz's extra cold. And then there's the Trinity variant, which is stacking all 3 elemental damage types on the bow, and you don't have to worry about conversion, and you have to proc Trinity. Now, the difference between these 2 builds is that the cold conversion variant just scales much harder because Hatred Aura is completely overpowered. And not to mention, there is a once-in-a-lifetime bow that has been made that probably has gotten a lot more people on the build. We actually go look at Tornado Shot right here. Just sort by DPS. And this build is called Maelstrom. Or wait, no. That guy doesn't have the bow. Does this guy have it? It's called Maelstrom Knock. It's actually a perfect bow. And I think the bow has been mirrored hundreds of times. So, yeah, you could definitely see that Tornado Shot is pretty much a build that people just slap on a bunch of mirrors. They mirror the quiver, they mirror the ring, and then they use Calandra's Touch, and then they mirror the bow. So very fun build to min-max. Next up, we have the most boring build in the game, known as Righteous Fire and Fire Trap. Now, Righteous Fire is the brainchild of the madman Pox, and he has decided to take his genius to another ascendancy known as Juggernaut. Now, if you don't know anything about Righteous Fire, it was predominantly played on Inquisitor last patch. I think it was 90%. However, Juggernaut is actually just a really overpowered ascendancy, and it perfectly fits the theme for Righteous Fire, which is for players that are kind of newer to the game and they just want to never die. And if you play Righteous Fire on Pox's variant, your character will probably never ever touch the ground and die. Now, 86% of players are actually using Juggernaut. And the main difference in terms of unique items for Righteous Fire this time around is that Aegis Aurora is not being used anymore, and purely because Juggernaut already gets a bunch of regen, and you can use Sappho's Frame on it to make up for the elemental damage reduction you're missing. And the build, you might be wondering, oh, how does the clear speed actually work? The clear speed is pretty good. There is a new flask called Orias End, which actually grants you Explode, which actually scales pretty well where you have a lot of AoE scaling. Now, there's also Legacy of Fury, which kind of does like an Ignite Prolif on the ground. And in order to make up for the Consecrated Ground regen that's missing from Inquisitor, I think Pox decided to use Immortal Flesh, which is why Immortal Flesh was actually a pretty expensive belt at the beginning of the league. Now, 10% of players are Inquisitors and 4% are Elementalists. And that's actually a pretty interesting thing. Now, for anyone wondering what does Righteous Fire actually look like, you will see that this is not exactly the slowest build ever. It's kind of a very similar playstyle to an auto-bombing playstyle, except you have to throw your fire traps for single target. And boy, man, that guy is taking a long time to read those altars. Maybe if I took that time, I wouldn't have misclicked the Divine Altar. But you can see this build is nothing special. It's not really super fast. It is very tanky. This guy does have the Explode Flask. And there is a different variant that Jung did with Elementalist, and it looks a lot faster than this. And this is pretty much just because this build's lacking a little bit of area. But as you can see, it's perfectly fine for farming. I would think that it's kind of annoying farming on a build because you probably can't do no regen on a lot of maps. So that is an issue. Now, next up, we have the #1 build, and it is Spark, one of my favorite skills of all time. And Spark has been the biggest surprise of Sanctum, and I do think that a lot of the popularity of Spark comes down to the fact that it's pretty much 2 builds in one right now. And it's super well-rounded, and it also got a unique item that has made Spark pretty much have double duration and effectively double damage on some layouts. Now, Spark is also amazing in Sanctum. It's probably one of the builds that's done the most no-hit runs along with Tornado Shot, Stormbrand, and Hexblast Mines. And the thing with Spark is that there's 2 different variants of the build, which is with Poison on Occultist and on Inquisitor, which is just hit base, Call of the Brotherhood, 2 Nebulous Spark with Melting of the Flesh. And with Heat Shiver, I think Spark's damage is probably out of this world. And if you just want to see what the mapping looks like, Spark is definitely a build that has pretty decent mapping. It's not exactly what you would call the fastest mapper in the world, but on some open layouts, Spark is probably up there with some of the fastest layouts, fastest clearing builds in the game. And this is Poison Spark, as you can see. And this build actually doesn't look very good. I'm assuming that I chose a really bad video or something, but yeah, if I saw this build, oh man, look at that. Those are the explosions, I'm assuming. Or is that from Profane Bloom? I'm actually not sure if they run Profane Bloom. But as you can see, this is probably not the best video to showcase the build, because I think this guy just doesn't know how to play the build, or the setup is kind of weird. But don't look at that and be scared. Spark is definitely, right now, one of the best builds, all-around builds. Great for mapping, great for bossing. Has that little bit of a new flavor with Nimmies, which is completely overpowered, by the way. Can be played in a lot of different variants. Decently tanky build. Great for even doing the Crimson Temple Magic Find farm. And Spark is amazing for Sanctum. So you can preload all your damage and instantly kill the boss before it even spawns. So I highly recommend, you haven't tried it out, to give Spark a little bit of a whirl. Now, overall, what do I think of the meta? The meta is kind of incomplete at the moment because Poe.ninja has effectively been capped out and everyone is level 100, so it's kind of weird now. So I don't even think the meta can actually shift. Now, the meta is near identical to last league in terms of the popular skills. Popular skills will always be popular skills. As you can see, this is Kalandra League, and what do we have here? Lightning Strike, which is the one that got removed. Then we have Righteous Fire. So Lightning Strike, you can pretty much assume that most people who play Lightning Strike tried out Venom Gyre. And then we have Righteous Fire, Fire Trap again. And then we have Ice Spear and Cast on Crit. And then we have Tornado Shot. And right under this is we have Spark. So it's pretty much the identical meta, which is what a lot of people was afraid of. However, there has been a lot of discovery of new popular builds that have piqued people's interest. So we have Hex Blast Mines, which wasn't popular enough for me to feature, but it's definitely a new build that's very, very strong. Then we have SRS, not really a new build, but more popular. People have realized how OP SRS is with the Covenant and the Poison variant. Impending Doom, which is actually new. Impending Doom doesn't really show up that well on Poe.ninja. You have to actually look at the number of people playing Vixens, and this is actually a very cool build concept that is probably not really played enough. So you can see right here, you can't really see the damage. I guess it's also Hex Blast, right? Or I don't really know. But basically, they use Vixens in order to curse, and then it removes the curse, and it does damage. I think it's the thing that Impending Doom was a keystone before. And it's a support gem. And then there's also the Original Sin variants of a lot of popular builds. So Original Sin is the new item in Sanctum League, and that allows you to convert all of your elemental damage to chaos. And even though it's not that popular yet, you can see that there's a lot of builds that wouldn't be as popular, as a little bit different, that people have been slapping on Original Sin and trying out. This guy has Original Sin and Nimmies, the most expensive ring combo ever. And he's actually running some sort of Poison Spark. So that's another build that someone has tried out, a little bit of a spin. So overall, I do think the meta is pretty healthy in the sense that there's a lot of different options. There's no one overwhelming best build in the game. And the best part about it is I do think that every single build serves a certain purpose. So you have Venom Jar for league starting, you have Spark as an all-around build, you have Tornado Shot for mapping, and then you have Righteous Fire for beginners and noobs. And then you just have all sorts of different things to choose from. And it really is all about what playstyle you want, and that is the biggest thing, like I always mentioned before. And I hope that the API is expanded a little bit more, because I really want to see what the build meta would be if you actually made this level 80 cutoff or level 90 cutoff. But I do think that PoE just has too many players. You can't really show 25 million characters on Poe.ninja, right? And that's just a problem with how popular this league is. 25 million is just not going to fit on the, the database. But thanks for watching, everyone. Let me know in the comments down below what build you've been playing and what build you found to be the biggest surprise of Sanctum. Thanks for watching. I hope you find more Mirrors, Divines, and Mage Bloods than me. And see you next time. Bye!